Chapter 1. The Storm on the Cliffs. Late June, 1914. The storm had come suddenly, as if flung across the sea by some capricious god. One moment the Cornish sky lay in its customary June splendor, an expanse of luminous blue stretched wide above St. Mawes, and the next clouds gathered like dark sails drawing inward, heavy with unshed rain. The fishing boats hurried toward shelter. The gulls wheeled low, crying warnings that only the wise heeded. Eleanor Ashford, however, was not wise where storms were concerned. She crouched on a grassy outcrop above the cliffs, her skirts gathered beneath her, her watercolor box nestled among the wild thyme. With careful strokes, she attempted to capture the peculiar lavender gray of the sea before rain washed the color from the world. Wind tugged her straw hat by its ribbon and teased stray curls from beneath it. Still she painted on. It was only when the first patter of rain struck her paper. Chapter 1. The Storm on the Cliffs. Late June, 1914. The storm had come suddenly, as if flung across the sea by some capricious god. One moment the Cornish sky lay in its customary June splendor, an expanse of luminous blue stretched wide above St. Mawes, and the next clouds gathered like dark sails drawing inward, heavy with unshed rain. The fishing boats hurried toward shelter. The gulls wheeled low, crying warnings that only the wise heeded. Eleanor Ashford, however, was not wise where storms were concerned. She crouched on a grassy outcrop above the cliffs, her skirts gathered beneath her, her watercolor box nestled among the wild thyme. With careful strokes, she attempted to capture the peculiar lavender gray of the sea before rain washed the color from the world. Wind tugged her straw hat by its ribbon and teased stray curls from beneath it. Still she painted on. It was only when the first patter of rain struck her paper, plump drops blooming like unwelcome flowers, that she gasped softly. "Oh, not yet," she murmured, shielding her sketchbook with her arm. A shadow fell across her. A coat, naval blue, heavy wool, smelling faintly of salt and something like cedar, was lifted and held above her as a canopy. "You will forgive my intrusion, mademoiselle, but your work is in peril." Startled, Ellie looked up. Standing above her was a man in the dark blue uniform of the French Navy, his cap tucked beneath his arm to prevent the wind from stealing it. Rain beaded upon the gold trim of his sleeves. His expression was earnest, apologetic, and somehow gently amused. "Thank you," she managed. "I was too absorbed to notice the clouds." He smiled. "They crept upon us all. The sea can be treacherous in such matters." His English carried a soft French cadence, musical even under the rising wind. Carefully, he adjusted the coat so it shielded her paper more securely. "I can hold it a little longer if you wish to save your painting." Ellie should have forgotten the painting entirely. Propriety alone insisted she rise at once and flee homeward. Yet the sincerity in his voice, the unexpected gallantry, anchored her. "I think it is beyond saving," she said softly, closing the sketchbook. "But thank you, truly." He lowered the coat, settling it over one arm. "Permit me to escort you back to safety. These cliffs can be persuasive in a storm." She hesitated but nodded, gathering her things. Side by side, without touching, they walked back along the slippery path. Rain fell in earnest now, soaking her thin summer blouse and clinging to his dark hair. He said little, matching his pace to hers. "I am Lieutenant de Vaisseau Julian Laurent, stationed in Plymouth for a time. I took the ferry this morning, foolishly, it seems." "Eleanor Ashford," she replied, then added with a smile, "and I was equally foolish to linger out on the cliffs." Their eyes held for a brief moment. something quiet, new and delicate passing between them. Then he bowed slightly. "Mademoiselle Ashford, it has been my honor." And before she could thank him again, he stepped back into the rain, his figure failing into the silvery curtain, while her heart thudded strangely within her. She did not know yet that she would meet him again, nor that a storm of far heavier consequence brewed across Europe. Chapter 2. Accidental Meetings. Early July 1914. The second encounter occurred 3 days later, though Ellie never decided whether it was truly accidental. She had taken her sketching things to a sheltered cove where foxgloves grew in tall, elegant spires. The tide was low, revealing pools filled with drifting fronds of kelp and darting shrimp. She knelt to capture the peculiar translucence of the rocks beneath the water, when she heard the crunch of gravel behind her. "Mademoiselle Ashford," came the familiar voice. "It seems the weather is kinder today." She turned. Julian Laurent stood on the path above, holding his cap beneath his arm again, not from rain this time, but as if habit dictated it when greeting a lady. His white summer uniform caught the sunlight, and she remembered suddenly how he had shielded her painting from the storm. "Lieutenant Laurent, you did not return to Plymouth yet." He stepped down carefully toward her, mindful of the rocks. "Our exercises are delayed, and I confess this coast has its charms. I hoped to walk along it again." Ellie suspected more than coincidence, but the warmth rising in her cheeks forbade her from questioning it. Together they wandered along the cove. He showed her the French names for shells. She pointed out wild herbs hidden among the dunes. They spoke of poetry. He carried a slim book of Verlaine's verses in his pocket, worn at the edges, which he read aloud in the original French. The language, though she scarcely understood it, seemed to ripple like silk on the breeze. Each meeting after that seemed even less accidental. An afternoon on the coastal path where he claimed to be surveying the tides. A morning near the post office where he admitted to having no letters to send, merely a suspicion I might see someone sketching nearby. A picnic arranged under the pretense of mutual convenience, accompanied by the scent of crushed sea thrift and the distant toll of buoy bells. The small gestures accumulated like threads in a delicate tapestry. His hand offering hers a step over a stream. Her laughter escaping more freely than she ever permitted before. The way his gaze warmed whenever she spoke of botany, as though her passion were the most fascinating study in the world. And though neither spoke the word love, both felt its shape forming quietly between them, soft as thistledown, inevitable as the tide. Chapter 3. The Gathering Shadow. Mid-late July 1914. In the village, newspapers began to display unsettling headlines. Archduke assassinated in Sarajevo. Europe holds its breath. Naval maneuvers intensify. Ellie read them with a furrowed brow each morning. Julian read them with a kind of stillness that frightened her more than the headlines themselves. "Is it truly so grave?" she asked him one warm, golden evening as they sat among the heather overlooking the harbor. He hesitated, then answered in a low voice, "It is worse than grave. There is a feeling among the officers, like the hush before a storm breaks. Many of us hope diplomacy will prevail, but the machinery of war, once set in motion—" His eyes wandered over the peaceful village, the boats bobbing lazily under sunset. "It is difficult to halt." She placed her hand on the grass between them, close but not quite touching his. "You sound as though you expect to be called back." "I do, perhaps soon." Her next words faltered. I wish the world were not like this." "So do I," he murmured. Their shared silence held more meaning than any declaration could have. The sun sank behind them, and the horizon tinted itself in rose and gold, as though unaware that history trembled on the brink. Chapter 4. The Lantern Fete. Late July, 1914. The summer fete in St. Mawes was always charming, but that year it glowed with a peculiar poignancy, as if the village sensed it might be the last untroubled celebration for some time. Lanterns hung from fishing nets strung between cottages, casting gentle amber light across the green. Fiddles played sprightly tunes, children danced barefoot on the grass, women sold buns glazed with honey. Ellie arrived with her family, wearing a white muslin dress and a pale blue sash that fluttered in the sea breeze. She expected only polite conversation, perhaps a modest dance, until she saw Julian standing near the harbor wall, straight-backed in his crisp uniform, watching the festivities with an expression that softened when he noticed her. He approached. "Mademoiselle Ashford, may I have the honor of a dance?" Her breath caught. She placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth of his palm even through the proper gloves she wore. They moved together to the gentle rhythm of the fiddle, surrounded by lanterns swaying in the twilight. Ellie was aware of her parents somewhere in the crowd, yet in that moment the village receded, leaving only the two of them. When the dance ended, neither let go immediately. Instead, they wandered to the edge of the green where the lantern light gave way to starlight. A soft wind lifted the scent of salt and meadowsweet. "Eleanor," he said quietly, her full name sounding like an intimate vow on his lips. "Before my orders arrive, I must tell you." She stepped closer. "Yes." "That you have changed my world in ways I did not know possible." His voice trembled. "If fate were kinder, I would ask—" She silenced him by placing her hand lightly against his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her fingertips. He bent his forehead to hers. Their first kiss came then, tender, searching, filled with the sweetness of hope and the ache of fear. Lantern light flickered across them as though blessing their union. And in a voice rough with emotion, Julian whispered, "I will come back for you, whatever happens." Chapter 5. The Farewell in Plymouth, early August 1914. War was declared on the 4th of August. Bells rang, crowds gathered, and patriotic fervor surged through England like a rising tide. Ellie felt none of the exhilaration others seemed to embrace, only a hollow ache in her chest. Julian sent word summoning her to Plymouth for a final farewell. She traveled with her father, who believed she wished only to pay her respects to the Allied officers. He did not know, could not know, how her hands shook inside her gloves. The railway station was chaotic. Uniforms everywhere, mothers clinging to sons, wives shielding children from the sight of tearful departures. Rain fell heavily, drumming on the iron roof. Julian stood near the platform's end, his uniform immaculate despite the downpour. Yet there was something haunted in his eyes, as though sleep had eluded him. "Ellie," he breathed when she reached him. Her father briefly stepped aside to speak to another gentleman, granting them a precious moment. She pressed into his hand a small pressed cornflower she had carried in an envelope. "For luck," she whispered. "Keep it with you." He touched the fragile blue petals as though they were something sacred. "I shall guard it with my life." When the whistle blew, Ellie felt her composure shatter. She clung to him, propriety forgotten, rain mingling with her tears. His arms enveloped her fiercely. "Promise me," she whispered desperately. "Promise me you will return." "I swear it," he said into her hair. "Even if the world breaks apart, I will find my way back to you." Then he tore himself away, saluted her father, and boarded the train. The carriage door closed. The train began to move. Ellie pressed her hand to the glass until he disappeared behind the veil of rain. And for the first time since childhood, she sobbed without restraint. Chapter 6. Letters Across the Channel. Mid-August 1914. The first letter arrived 4 days later, written in Julian's elegant script, full of tenderness and longing. He wrote of the sea, of drills at dawn, of officers pretending courage they did not feel. He quoted Verlaine, "Il pleure dans mon cœur comme il pleut sur la ville," and she traced the words with her fingertips as if they could summon him. Her letters in return were gentle, full of descriptions of Cornish wildflowers and village life. She did not speak of loneliness, though it threaded through every sentence she wrote. As August waned, Julian's tone shifted. "Dearest Ellie, I find myself pacing the decks long after midnight. The air is heavy with expectation. Some among us speak bravely of battle, but I feel only dread. Yet when I recall your face, I am steadied. You are the harbor of my heart." His fear pierced her, more frightening than any newspaper report. She held his letters to her chest, praying each night for his safety. Chapter 7. The Dawn Reunion. Early September 1914. She did not expect him. No letter hinted at leave, no telegram preceded him. Yet, on a misty September dawn, as Ellie walked the meadow path behind her home, she saw a figure emerging through the veil of fog. Tall, dark uniform, moving with the determined stride she knew as well as her own heartbeat. "Julian?" Her voice cracked. He broke into a run. She followed suit. They collided in an embrace that shook them both. His coat was cold with morning dew. Her cheeks were damp with tears she had not felt falling. "I have only 48 hours, he murmured into her hair. "An emergency leave. I came as fast as I could." They spent that day wandering every path they had ever walked. They sat on the cliffs, sharing bread and apples. He read poetry to her. She sketched him when he was not looking. The afternoon sunlight gilded them as though trying to preserve their happiness in amber. That night, beneath a sky trembling with stars, they spoke of fragile futures. They did not touch beyond the chaste intimacy propriety allowed, yet the closeness of their bodies, the warmth of shared breath, felt as sacred as any union. "Promise me," Ellie whispered as they stood on the cliff. "Promise me again." He took her hands and pressed them to his lips. "I promise with all that I am." Chapter 8. Borrowed Time. Mid-September 1914. He left before dawn, the sea wind cold and sharp. Ellie watched him disappear over the hill, her heart aching like a wound reopened. 2 days later, a telegram arrived. Orders changed, reassigned to home water escort. Safe for now. Will write. She sank into a kitchen chair, the telegram trembling in her hands. Relief swept her so strongly she felt faint. Then, scarcely a week afterward, another telegram came. "Returning to Cornwall. 2 days leave granted. Yours, J." She pressed the paper to her lips, unable to speak for joy. Chapter 9. Home Waters. Late September 1914. Julian arrived at dusk, stepping from the carriage with a smile gentler than sunlight. When Ellie rushed to him, he caught her and spun her lightly before setting her down with a laugh, a rare, unguarded sound that made her heart swell. They walked through the village, ignoring curious glances. Lanterns were fewer now. Wartime rationing had begun. But the sea shone silver under the moon, and the air smelled of hope as much as autumn. "Your ship is safe?" she asked as they strolled along the shore. "For now, escort duty, home waters. It may last months." "And after?" He looked at her, eyes soft yet resolute. "After, whatever comes, I will return to you." She touched his cheek, marveling that he was here, warm beneath her fingertips. "Whatever comes," she echoed. Chapter X. The Cliff at Sunrise. Early October, 1914. The first frost had brushed the meadows with whisper of silver when Ellie and Julian climbed the cliffs at sunrise. He wore his uniform. She wore her woolen autumn coat. They stood side by side, his arm around her waist, her head resting against his shoulder. Below them, fishing boats returned to the harbor, their lanterns flickering like humble stars. The war had begun in earnest now, distant yet present in every newspaper, every ration, every whispered prayer. But in that moment, suspended between night and day, they felt invincible. "Ellie," he murmured, "I do not know what the coming months will bring, but I know this, my heart belongs to you, and no war, no distance, no fate can unmake that truth." She turned to him, her eyes luminous in the new sunlight. "And mine belongs to you." They held each other as the sun broke fully over the horizon, painting the sea with gold. The wind tugged at their clothes, playful and wild. The world was uncertain, trembling at its edges, but here, atop the cliffs of St. Mawes, love stood steadfast. Julian pressed his forehead to hers and whispered, "Whatever comes, we have this." And Ellie, smiling through sudden tears, whispered it back, "Whatever comes, we have this."